Welcome to the Divorce to Dynamite podcast. I'm Michelle O'Neill. Today I have a really special guest I want to share with you today. His name is Joey Natale. And he is so educated and so special. You're going to love him. He has a relationship coaching business called Grow Our Light. He is a specialist in leveling up both personally and professionally. He has a degree in health and wellness, in psychology. He has a certification in health coaching. And personally, he has really helped me level my own stuff up. So welcome to the podcast, Joey Natale.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I feel like I want to do like a drum solo or something. Like
Yeah.
ta-dun. Yeah. So welcome to the podcast. How is your weather today, though? I was kind of concerned that we might have a little weather thing and you might be like,
Yes.
it's kind of bad weather here.
At the current moment, it's very clear. It's very cloudy. We will be having like either a tropical storm or maybe it's a hurricane now come in this evening.
Yeah,
It's what we did today.
I was a little worried about you, but we're good for
Appreciate
now.
it.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, on my podcast, our audience is women after divorce. And the pain point, or one of many, obviously, pain points of women after divorce is, that feeling of rejection. Whether you choose the divorce, whether you don't choose the divorce, whether you just happen to find yourself there, everybody who exits a marriage, you never enter a marriage thinking you're going to get a divorce. So when you exit a marriage, there's rejection, there's loss of confidence, there's, all these, self-acceptance problems. And the reason that I invited you to be on the podcast is because I think that is kind of squarely where your coaching business hits. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about, what are some strategies that we can use to kind of bounce back?
Yeah. I mean, good question.
I kind of hit you with all the questions all at once, didn't I?
No, it's fine. I've got a couple of directions I can go.
Excellent.
But I'll start with this. What comes to mind about that is when any relationship ends, especially with a divorce, obviously you as a lawyer know way more about the ins and outs than I do. But with any relationship, I said before in one of our previous conversations, it's not just the end of a relationship. It's how you perceive your future, present, and past. They all change and they all hit you at once. That's one of the many reasons why it's so jarring, let alone like having heartbreak and things like that. Heartbreak and rejection. So you're kind of lost for a moment, wondering about all these future plans I had, all these directions I was going to go with this person are over. And they're not going to be what I hoped they were going to be. And that's obviously stressful and feels empty in a lot of ways. So then you're asking yourself, what do I do now? But a better question is, who am I now without this person? And one of the other things I mentioned in our previous conversation, I'll share again here, is that sometimes people don't want to let go of what was. And it's as if when the heartbreak sometimes isn't painful about the break, it's that we are trying to keep it together. We don't want it to change. This is too painful, right? So rather than just letting it fall, because when they fall, you become free to a certain degree, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then you forge a new path.
Yeah. No,
Right?
I think that's so true. I think I do see that, I mean, I'm not here to give the legal advice part of it, but
Sure.
I do see that with so many people that do finally, come to the conclusion that their marriage is ending. They have struggled for so long of trying to hold it together. And whether it's their choice or the other spouse's choice or just kind of a recognition of everybody, that there has been a time period of struggle that of the kind of trying to keep it together. And occasionally I even see people who come and maybe consult or start the process of the divorce and then change their minds and go back to the holding it together process. And that's, I mean, that is a rough time frame of the, I guess, the contemplative part of the process of divorce, of the trying to hold it together and deciding whether it's actually falling apart.
Absolutely. And another thing that comes to mind about this is pain, whether emotional, typically emotional or mental, specifically for this example, isn't really optional. There's pain in the world. It's going to happen, right? But suffering is optional. So one thing I like to teach my clients and walk them through is suffering equals pain times resistance. Resistance is not accepting what is and wanting to hold on, kind of like what I said before. So initially, when you get clear on like, what am I resisting? Maybe the divorce happened to me because I didn't want this and it was their choice. That's hard, right? Or maybe you did choose it. And then like the aftermath, all those things, like what are you resisting? You know, sometimes when people end a relationship, they might bury themselves in work, which is not an unhealthy strategy to a degree, like with all things with balance. But if you put your head down and work, sure, you might lessen the pain, sometimes numbing it. But if you never come up for air and ask yourself, where am I going? What am I doing? And more importantly, who am I being? What are you doing with your life? Kind of
Right.
thing.
I call that,
You know what I
I
mean?
call that ostrich dancing.
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
call that
love that.
ostrich dancing, because ostrich dancing is when you put your head in the sand and you wiggle your butt and you call it dancing. You pretend like it's dancing, but it's not dancing because your head's in the sand.
Right. And you're just kind of living a half of a life that you could be living.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, so it's like you're burying yourself in your work, you're burying yourself in your kids or your activities or whatever, and not really dealing with the struggle that you kind of need to work yourself through.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing comes to mind about this is like, so, you maybe identify the resistance or you're working through that process, and it's a clarity thing, taking time to heal. And that can look like a lot of things for many different people. So taking time for yourself and being kind, that can show up like a lot of things. Maybe that's a bath. Maybe that's just sleeping more. Maybe you have a lot of kids and a lot of work schedules that you don't get to. But making time for that is important to heal, kind of thing. Yes.
I liked what you talk about in your workbook about self-acceptance. And
Yes.
I think that for women after divorce, that is a hard place to get to. And I think and you probably know way more about this, but I think it comes from that sense of rejection. You've been rejected in this marriage. Even if you choose the divorce, there's still a sense of this feeling that what you chose and the person you chose, you have now kind of been rejected from. And it's hard to feel that sense of self-acceptance when you feel rejected.
Yeah. And what comes to mind about this is one of the topics I speak on heavily in my own talks is confidence. The Latin word for confidence is confidere, which means intense trust. The more you trust yourself, the more confidence you have. On that note, self-worth and self-acceptance are similar, but for this example, we'll use them as the same. So self-worth, if you're looking at the foundation of a house, that's the foundation of self-worth. Confidence is the house that it's built on. So again, using the analogy of pain versus resistance and suffering, like accepting what is of the circumstances and then looking at inwards in yourself. This is part of the healing journey of accepting like where I am, what are the choices I made, who do I want to be with next? Or maybe I just want to take time for myself and be with myself. And rather than focusing on maybe the next relationship or the next project, how can I start to love myself deeper?
I like that.
Was
Make you your next project. Just
Pretty
focus on
much.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
focus on you.
And, I also want to add to that is like, rather than thinking about yourself as a project that needs to be completed, because when it comes to relationships and health, you don't win at them. You don't win a marriage. You don't win at eating healthy. You do it consistently. And it's something you practice as a choice in life, right? Sure, you might have fitness goals. That's one thing. But this is also true with your relationship with yourself. So rather than a project that needs to be completed, it's a project that will never be completed. But, some people like to think, well, I'll never be good enough. So what's the point? Well, that's not a way to live.
Right.
Right?
Right. That reminds me of a poem. Have you ever heard of the poem, The Station?
No, I haven't.
I'll have to find it and I'll send it to you. And maybe whenever we post this episode, I'll post it in the comments or something. And it's basically the gist of the poem is that life is like a train ride. And you never really arrive at the station. Like you're always traveling, but you never actually arrive.
Yes.
And it's more about the journey than it is the arrival. And that's, I think that's how I identify with what you're saying, that, life is about the journey, not the arrival.
That's very true. Speaking of poems, I'm glad you brought that up.
I love poems. I love poems.
Good, because I want to share one with your audience.
Please.
There is one that comes to mind. This is particularly in the concept of like, when you get out of that divorce and you're just like, I'm not going to open my heart to anyone else. I'm just going to focus on me, which is very healthy in some ways. But again, like in most things, there's a balance. So I'll read this and I'll share more. It's very short. To love it all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries, avoiding all entanglement. Lock it up safe in the casket, coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, and motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. C.S. Lewis.
Oh, I love C.S. Lewis. I love that. I love that. You also said something in your workbook on this point, that you are the main character and the author of your story and don't be a spectator.
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Don't be a spectator. Like, don't sit on the sidelines. That is one of my favorite points to make for anybody, is just don't sit on the sidelines. Like, even if you take action and you fall on your face, it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of, I can't remember which president said this, but in one of his speeches, but he said, like, rather to be the someone in the arena who is failing miserably
Theodore
than someone
Roosevelt.
in the stand. Yes. Be the
Yes.
person in the stands who is mocking those. Trying your best and putting yourself there is hard. It's not easy. Loving somebody is not easy. Loving yourself is not easy because you're going to see things about yourself you may not like. Maybe there's shoulds or shouldn'ts that you were told by your parents and society or your culture that said this is wrong or bad, rather than really defining out what you want. So that's kind of the conversation I was, piggybacking off of with this quote here, or this poem, is like, it's hard to love. It's hard because you're going to get hurt, kind of thing. And shedding yourself off to the world is one of the worst things you can do, because you're robbing yourself of one of the greatest pleasures of life, which is joy and connection with somebody else, and especially maybe with yourself.
Right. So what are some tips or some tactics that people can take to rebuild that confidence, to put themselves out there again?
Of course. So the summarized version is do hard things, or more specifically, do things that scare you. What does that mean? What do you mean by that? Well, it depends. Like, if it's the context of putting yourself out there and relationship wise, maybe it means just hanging out with friends, going up meetup.com, Facebook events, Eventbrite, going to a speed friending thing if you want to take it slow. Maybe it's on dating apps, not always the best thing. I personally prefer in person. I find more connections and genuineness to come out that way. So starting slow. I like to phrase this by like I use a video game reference because I'm a gamer of like easy mode, normal mode, hard mode, and like nightmare mode. Like you don't want to jump in the deep end kind of thing. Start with where you're at, and that has a level of clarity where you are kind of thing. So doing things that frighten you that may make you nervous. Maybe it's walking up to somebody, having a conversation and telling you find them attractive. Maybe that's too
Ooh,
much.
woo, that's hard.
Yeah, it is. Maybe that's too much for some people.
That puts you out there for them to reject you.
Correct. It is. Interesting thing about rejection is I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but he wrote Rejection Proof. What he found, which was really fascinating about rejection, is that the more you do it, the more resilient you become with it.
Wow.
Right? It's a mental muscle, right? So yes, when you just get out of a relationship or divorce, like take care of yourself. Seriously, don't go hard mode or nightmare mode and just start dating and getting rejected constantly. That's
right.
not setting yourself up to win, right? So when you feel ready and you decide, make that move. What's the thing that scares you? Right. When it comes to romanticness, or it could be something that's scary in your own self. Maybe loving yourself is like you've always wanted to go skydiving, which sounds extreme, I know, but maybe that's something you've always wanted to do. What is something you've always wanted to do that's loving yourself, putting your needs and priority first?
I do like the idea of doing things that scare you.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that I preach is that fear is a useless emotion. And obviously we're not talking about things that really ought to be scary, you know,
Right.
But things that we're fearful of that, you know, that we can overcome. You know, I preach that fear is a useless emotion. Because when you do the things that you're scared of, then you're no longer scared of them. And they're no longer scary, like you said. I mean, going up to somebody you find attractive and just telling them that. I mean, the worst thing that happens is they're like, well, okay, thanks, and they don't reciprocate. Well, then, hey, at least you made their day.
That's true, right?
I mean,
and you can do this in different ways. Like, sure, in the romantic context, that's one kind of extreme one for certain people, but like, what are other things? I guess what I'm trying to say here is like, doing things that scare you even in your own personal life that don't involve other people will translate. Like, for example, I practice taking cold showers a minute every day. Why? Because it builds the same resilient muscles of doing things that are difficult or I don't want to do. And so it translates because how you do one thing is how you do everything.
I like
Right.
that. I like that. I mean, I'm not going to take any cold showers anytime soon. I'm just saying.
It's really good for you.
I know. I'm familiar with the Wim Hof method. Like I've read all the books, Aubrey Marcus. I've read all the books. I know all the. I could spout to you all the reasons to do it.
Yeah.
I go to a resort in Cancun several times a year, and they have a whole hydrotherapy thing. And when I'm there, I actually do the ice bath and the cold plunge and the hot plunge and the whole thing.
Good for you.
But when I'm at home, I am not doing the cold shower. I'm just not doing it. I know it's good for me. Anyway. But I hear you. I know it's good for me, but I'm not doing it. maybe we'll have a whole session on that, Joey. Yeah. But I do think those kind of things are good for us. I really do.
Yeah.
One of the things that you say in your workbook about building confidence is well, I'm paraphrasing you, showing grace to others, being kind and showing grace to others as a way of building your own confidence. And I thought that was a very interesting insight. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. So what I love this so much, this concept is, the high level is like gratitude in general, because when you're feeling grateful, you can't feel hateful, especially towards yourself. Right. So showing kindness is free. Sometimes it's not easy, especially for those ones that are stressful, like family sometimes, but it's important because it's a good, healthy practice. Because the more you do it on a daily basis, the more You're going to, I can't remember who said this, somebody smart, where watch your thoughts, they turn into words. Watch your words, they turn into actions. Watch your habits, they turn into your destiny.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the way that turns into action is that I think sometimes we just are so inside of our own minds, like it's hard to see outside of ourselves. And so you get inside your head and you're so focused on like all the things I need to do today, or how bad I feel today, or how upset I am at, my circumstance or whatever. But then, you're at the grocery store and you see somebody that has really cool shoes on and you're like, hey, nice shoes, and it's just such a simple thing, such a simple compliment. But what if that person was having a bad day and just the simple words, nice shoes, 2 words, didn't take you 10 seconds, but that one kind action, the one kind thought in that, maybe it made their day. And by
Right.
just that one action of coming outside yourself, showing that kindness or grace to somebody else, it made their day and it got you out of it kind of stopped you in your mindset in your tracks, and it interrupted your flow and kind of stopped your downward spiral. That, like, to me,
Yes.
that's what, when I read your words, like, that's what it meant to me.
It's a pattern interrupter, essentially, right? Because when you're in your head, you're dead, and you want to feel more confident, and you want to feel more than just yourself. Start giving, sharing, and supporting others.
I like that.
Right.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
A friend of mine said, when she was at her lowest moment, that the thing that she did to get out of it was, and this she was talking about after her divorce, the thing that she did to get out of it was just to simply give back to others and to help others through telling her story. And that helped her as much as it helped other people. And that's exactly what you're saying. And that's just amazing.
So true.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, so tell me your mission statement. I meant to do that at the beginning and I didn't. I just got so excited about getting into it with you that, or I have it written down if you want me to tell your mission statement, but I love it. Do you want me
Well, you can go and read it, but
Okay.
I was like, what comes to mind about that is like the lighthouse analogy. I can't remember if that's what I wrote down, to be honest.
Well, the mission statement that I read of yours was that your mission is to inspire, empower, and overcome loneliness and the scarcity mindset and the feelings of being stuck. I love
Yes.
that.
Yes.
I love that.
It's true. And I'll add on that real quick is like, I love this analogy and I love to share it usually in talks or podcasts I give about, I like to view myself as a lighthouse. What do I mean by that? So I like to view myself as like a beacon of hope and light and inspiration of others, right? A light being a warm place to shine on others. I don't want to be a place where people can lean on permanently, right? Crippling them, but rather an example for them to learn how to stand tall on their own and for them to be their own beacon of light. And thus, as we said in what you just said, continuing the ripples of change and hope and prosperity through life. So that's what comes to mind. I want to add to that.
I like that. Well, if one of our viewers out there wants more of Joey and thinks that you are so inspiring and wants to help, wants some help from you to inspire them and work with you, how can they get in touch with you? How can they get more of Joey?
Yes, the best place to get in contact with me and or to learn more is to go to growourlight.com, my website, and inquire there and message me there. I will respond.
Awesome. Awesome. And you've got a little free gift for our viewers?
I do. Anybody who hears this podcast and would like a copy of the ebook / workbook of the self-acceptance, just put a little message in there. We'll come up with a little code word, whatever the name of this episode is.
Yeah.
And then just let me know and I'll send you a free copy of it.
Yeah. All right. So, so if you want more of Joey, he is amazing. He is so inspiring. Growourlight.com. And you can work with Joey and he can coach you and help you work through your post-divorce doldrums and help you build your self-acceptance and your confidence. So this has been the Divorced to Dynamite podcast featuring Joey Natale, relationship coach and confidence builder. We love it. Yay, go Joey. Growourlight.com. Thank you for joining us today, and join us next time.